Right. It does seem at times, and maybe this is an over characterization of what goes on in Calgary, is there's a lot of stuff we need to do.
Yeah.
And it seems like we get to the point where like it's just about to happen, and then we get scared and everyone pulls back and things don't happen.
Yeah.
And I was speaking with someone recently and we were contrasting where's Edmonton versus Calgary right now, and I was I wasn't born in Edmonton, but I was raised in Edmonton mostly, and I go up and see their event center or their ice district, and it's like, this downtown used to be a dump.
Yeah.
And now it's like completely transformed, and the ring road's done, and it's like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff we need to get on.
Well, it requires commitment, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about everything from investment to doing these projects, it's all about security and certainty and making sure that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And I believe it's about vision. It's about where do we want to be as a city and how are we going to get there? Assets are just assets, infrastructure is just infrastructure. But how does all those pieces ladder up to what we're trying to achieve as a city? And that's ultimately the goal of the mayor, to outline, here's the vision and here's where we're going to get to. It's hard though when leadership comes into criticism, projects become contentious. You have a number of people actively trying to misrepresent files, because it's not something they want to do. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep those narratives on track when you're trying to remain committed to the ultimate goal, and you know that there's a number of steps that you need to take to get there.
Right. And what happens too, and we probably see this in Calgary, is if you asked 100 people and said, what is the ultimate vision of Calgary, mm-hmm. you'd have probably zero answers, honestly.
Yeah.
But you'd at least have 100 different answers. Like, no one will be able to say, oh yeah, this is what we're fully committed to being in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, no one knows what that is.
Yeah. Well, and that's the challenge of being mayor, right? Yeah. You have to be everybody's mayor. You can't just mm-hmm. sort of subset to a certain demographic of people. You have to think about, if you're the mayor, you have to think about everything from the economy to homelessness. Yeah. And everything in between, and what's the ultimate goal? For me, it's continuing to make our city better, continuing to make life better for our citizens. Mm-hmm. And how do we do that? Well, we've got to think about how do we build a stronger economy and put people back to work. And so thinking about things like place. Placemaking is really one of those reasons why young people want to stay in Calgary, mm-hmm. and you want them to want to stay in Calgary, not need to stay in Calgary. Mm-hmm. You have to think about business environment and what is the local business environment, and in particular for small business. When you think about small business in our city, it's the number one employer in our city. And so getting the regulatory environment for them is absolutely critical to the success of all Calgarians. You have to think about it too, go back to what I said about security and certainty. When we're looking to attract investment here, those are the two biggest factors that people feel are lacking from Calgary today. And so we have to be able to think about, everything through that lens of security and certainty. And then you've got opportunity around place or innovation and talent. And that's where we really have to think about how are we going to transform our downtown? How are we going to transform our economy and do things differently here? And ultimately, it's about technology and how technology plays into a number of sectors and where those job creation pieces are going to be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in Calgary, and I was talking to, I don't know if you saw, we had a conversation with Daniel Smith some time ago, and we were talking about the innovative capacity of Alberta, really, mm-hmm. not just Calgary. And when you think back to, and I've said this, it'll start to sound a little repetitive, but I remember back when I was a kid and they discovered the oil sands, mm-hmm. and they were like, wow, this is going to be so complicated. We have oil mixed with sand. How are we ever going to separate those two things? And then that just spawned an entire industry that it was attached to oil and gas, but it wasn't oil and gas. It was engineering, it was process engineering, and that technology was able to span the globe, really, anywhere where there was oil. So,
well, and that's the big thing. I think you've actually hit it right on the head. I think Calgary and Edmonton in particular, we have to start thinking of ourselves as an innovation corridor, right? Mm-hmm. Silicon Valley is not just one piece of the valley. It's a huge valley where a lot of different companies are, but it's become kind of that mecca of technology. We have an opportunity to do that here, right? Where we can think about how do we ladder technology into solving some of the world's biggest problems, everything from energy to food and sustainability. Those are major things that are coming forward that, we've got a highly educated workforce here. We've got, incredibly talented people, and we've got a young workforce. These are things that we can now apply them into those sectors to start doing things differently here at home.
And I think you make a pretty good point about, we don't want to lose those people. They're well educated. They're here today. Yeah. But as soon as it's more attractive to be somewhere else, and it's possible to go there, mm-hmm. then suddenly we start to lose that, which is really sad.
Well, it's a big challenge right now. I mean, we're seeing a lot of young people leave our city, right? They're going to universities here or they're leaving. I had a guy say to me the other day, he said, Jeff, 30 years ago, I went to the University of Saskatchewan, and everybody in Saskatchewan was saying, let's get out of here. We got to go to Calgary.
Yep.
Calgary's where things are happening. It's a place to be. The challenge we had then was that, everybody came here, and now their kids are saying what they used to say about Saskatchewan, about Alberta. And he said to me, my second-year university student came home the other day, and he said, I'm going to go to Toronto. Things are happening in Toronto. And so we have to think about how do we build Calgary forward. It's not just about low taxes and all those things that we tend to focus on around elections. It's really about that placemaking component, making sure people want to be in Calgary, not need to be in Calgary.
Yeah, it needs to be you're right, an exciting place with the right amenities, the right mix of transportation and access, and there's a whole bunch of things that we can do in Calgary. So, and you mentioned the event center, which is a big one, and I think it's transformational in some ways because it lays a map for an area of Calgary, which is underutilized in some ways. So. Yeah,
I mean, I really do think, transformational exactly is the point here, right? We're not just doing a hockey deal here. This is really about transforming, the world's most least impressive parking lots into a district that we've always desired, frankly. Yeah. When we think about our overall downtown challenge, one of the biggest pieces we miss on here in Calgary is livability, right? We've got a very corporate downtown. We're probably one of the only jurisdictions in North America that doesn't have a significant post-secondary presence in the downtown core. And what that all means is that people aren't living here, right? Yeah. We've got to create ways to get more people living downtown, because if we can get people living downtown, we can activate our downtown through programming. And this is the event center is a bit of the programming piece, right? To think about if we could build an anchor facility and couple that with what we're doing with the BMO expansion, the Arts Commons, we've got the National Music Center, even laddering that all the way through to Chinatown. If we can figure out ways to get more people living downtown and activating these areas, that's going to be, successful for our recovery.
I'm curious if you have any insight on like the YMCA packed it in the Eau Claire YMCA, and I kind of thought that I know a lot of people that used to go there every single day, and I feel like if you're going to pack a whole pile of people into downtown Calgary, there's got to be something to do, because like you said, it's very corporate. You can hit Starbucks and all kinds of coffee shops, but there isn't a lot to do. And, we need to expand what can be done in the area.
Well, and in particular in a post-COVID world, when we're trying to attract more people to come back into the downtown core, just for business purposes, you're right. You have to think about programming and what are those things that we can be doing. I mean, the closure of the Eau Claire Y it's a sad day. I mean, it's not a civic facility, so there's nothing the city can really do there. But it does highlight to me, without the ability to get more people living and playing downtown, in particular when we're trying to encourage them to come back and work downtown, if you don't have those other factors there, we're going to see a lot more of these closures because more people are staying working in the suburbs.
Yeah, more of an exodus out of downtown.
Well, and you think about even the local buildings that we are putting together, right? Park Place is a great example of, a new sort of leasing community building, right? And, you got a rooftop pool, you've got a bar area, you've built in a sense of community, you've got heated underground parking, you've got a place for your dog, a state-of-the-art gym. You put all those amenities into livable pieces downtown, well, all of a sudden those secondary facilities like the Y are less and less needed because people have it localized in their own building. And so thinking through all of the assets we have and the opportunity we have to recover our downtown and how all those pieces can work together is going to be incredibly important for our recovery.
Yeah. It's interesting too. One of the things that Edmonton has is, and I always get stuck on this because I can never remember the name of the facility, but they have a basketball facility there that got built years ago, and my son was in basketball, and all of Western Canada goes to that facility. What the heck's it called? It'll hit me later. But, it's a massive court. Yeah. Calgary needs that sort of stuff too, so that we can draw people into Calgary rather than, we can still go to Edmonton. Yeah. Be better if we were going to Calgary.
And there's a lot of things we lose to Edmonton, right? I mean, part of the reason to say yes to the event center is stop losing major concerts that are going there. We lose them to Vancouver, we lose them to Edmonton. I mean, we lose a lot of opportunity to Saskatoon, and nobody thinks about that. And when you start thinking about where is all this opportunity going, where is the infrastructure to support this type of programming, it's all bypassing Calgary, and so we've got to think differently about how we do that.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff we could do, and I think you pointed this out actually is the event center isn't, and this isn't supposed to be all about the event center, but the event center, I think in the minds of many people is this one building, and it's not a building. And if people think that, they need to drive to Edmonton and see what happened to Edmonton.
Yeah.
And it's multiple blocks of massive economic development.
Yeah.
And we need that.
And
that's
exactly.
important.
That's what this is about. I mean, there's a lot of folks will say, well, Houston built a new facility and it didn't recover their downtown. And it's like, yep, single point data is rarely productive, right? I mean, one of the reasons we're not building this facility in the middle of a parking lot is because we want to activate it. And you want to activate it, 365 days a year, which I know isn't realistic, but you got to move from 44 hockey games and a couple of concerts a year to programming 250, 290 days out of the year. That's what this facility will do. We've now anchored it as a key point within the community. And so you look at places like, Kansas City, Columbus, Nashville, even Edmonton. You look at where they have been successful in standing these districts up. And then you're right, it becomes about economic development rather than about a single-use facility.
Yeah. And, it's, there's some risk in comparing us to Vegas but they're straight south and they've done an amazing job of attracting people. And then they put up an arena, and then they put up a football stadium, and there's just even more reasons to go there. And I don't know if you've ever been to any of the conferences that get run in their massive conference.
When we used to have conferences?
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, those facilities are packed, and they're booked years in advance, and packed.
Yeah.
And they just load up hotels and restaurants and everything else. Massive economic opportunity.
Well, and that's where, again, in this district, we've got not just the event center, it's coupled with the BMO expansion. So we're moving to be a tier 1 convention city. So we can compete by bringing in, 20 to 30,000 people at a time for some of these major conferences. That's where we can move the needle economically.
Yeah. What do you know, and this is sort of an aside topic, but 17th Avenue crosses McLeod, and there's a big project that's there, isn't it? I think very few people know about this project.
Yeah, it's all part of, the event district that we're trying to stand up. And so, providing access into Stampede grounds off of 17th Avenue is an incredible piece that we've opened up again. So there's a huge upgrade to move Stampede Station, the LRT station there, and then provide access straight into the park. Because it's all about connecting the neighborhood and ensuring that, there's viability across the district in terms of transportation.
And 17th Avenue is super busy, now, and it's become a great place for Calgary. I think the ability to go right from 17 right into Stampede is going to be another huge transformation. I don't think people really get how big of a deal that's going to be.
Well, and remember, it's the Stampede has desired for a long time their own sort of Stampede Street type of thing, right? And so this is really providing access, from the backside, whereas, it was always parking lot before.
Right.
And it can remain parking lot, but there's ways that we can start activating it and providing access egress differently into these sites.